Hey guys, it is your host Patricia. I want to welcome you to today's episode of The Dialogue. It is extremely late. However, this is a conversation that is well overdue, and it is definitely something that has been on my mind and spirit for the past couple days. So hopefully, as you know, our mantra is that we're healing souls one conversation at a time. And so it is my hope that as I divulge this information, that it is a place of testimony for me, something that I have overcome. And so it is my hope that as I speak about it, it is something that will help you as well. Don't forget to share the content. We want to help as many people as possible to give them ease and comfort on this journey called life. And stay tuned after this episode for more content. So, if you ever look at my social media, you will notice that there are pictures of me. There is content in regards to posts and stories. However, you never actually see me post my friends or talk about personal relationships with other females as well as other men or men. And so I find myself in a place of indifference because God created friendships and relationships as a place of safety, comfort, refuge, companionship. However, I don't necessarily glean from relationships in the aspect of people actually wanting to give me help, give me nurture, give me advice that doesn't make them feel better about themselves when I'm going through a tough time or situation. So let me go back to the beginning, because today we're going to go a little bit in different directions, but with the same purpose. I don't necessarily have a title for this podcast. It is just time to pull certain things out of my spirit that I have endured for a very long time. So today we're going to kind of talk about bullies, female bullies. We're going to kind of talk about the pain that can come from friendships and relationships, from same-sex relationships. Meaning, if you're a girl, you have friendships that are females. If you're a guy, you have friendships that are males. And oftentimes how difficult it is when you are anointed in Christ to maintain relationships or friendships with people. So let's go back to the foundation. My mother, whom I presently do not have a relationship with, was my first bully. She was the first relationship that I had as a child that was a bully to me. And we've often heard it said that our parents are the first friendships, relationships that we will have. However, what happens when those relationships are toxic? When they are toxic, they leave a blueprint for the next set of relationships that we shall have. Toxic relationships with parents as a child is not necessarily understood, because oftentimes when you're a child, you don't know you're being mistreated or abused. You may have the emotions such as sadness, anger, rage, but you don't necessarily know until you get older the negative impact that relationships can have on your life. My last season of my life lasted for about 7 years. And I remember in a particular dream, and this dream vividly comes back to me very often, where I was going into a market, and my mother at the beginning of the market was the one that handed me bacon. And She tried to serve it to me. I didn't take it. But I remember being in this market, and this store was extremely big, but everything was disheveled and everything was everywhere and everything was all over the place. And at the end, there was a person standing at the end of the store. And so I had to go through this store, this market. And how many of you know and understand that when God puts you in something, he will give you pieces? Not that it's fully understood or comprehended, but he will give you pieces at the beginning and closure at the end. So mind you that I told you that my mother was my first toxic female relationship. So it doesn't cause an uproar or shock me when I have a dream about her trying to serve me bacon. Because biblically in the Bible, I believe in the Old Testament that people that are in Christ, such as Jews back in the day, did not eat pork. They viewed the pig as detestable or defiled. And there is a lot of research in regards to the pig. Like, pigs do not have outlets to sweat. They do not have pores. So a lot of whatever is taking place with them, whether it's toxins or what do you want to call it? Anything that is healthy stays locked into the pig. So when you cut it, the meat has not been sweated and it hasn't been cleaned. See, for us as humans, when we sweat, a lot of toxins and impurities actually come out of our bodies. But pigs don't do that. And so as you see, when you cook bacon, there's so much water that comes from it and it actually seizes up. And so they say that a lot of that is filled with toxins and impurities. A lot of people don't recommend that you eat pork. But it's also biblical in the Old Testament. And so with my mother being at the front of the market and trying to give me pork, she was trying to give me something biblically that I shouldn't be eating. And this was the context of me and my mother's relationship. And this is exactly why we're separated. I can recall and remember times where my mom, when I was about 18 years old, would ask me, when are you having children? And I would say, when I'm getting married. And she would get agitated. Or anything that I would do in regards to my walk with Christ, it would be judged, or I would be bullied, or I would be talked about. I remember when I first got the opportunity of the evidence of speaking in tongues, my mother went around to the family and told them, Janae, which is my middle name, has lost her mind. She went about telling people that I was crazy. I remember when I started going to church and getting closer to Christ, my mother was my first relationship where Christ in my life wasn't necessarily accepted. And so can you imagine the controversy of trying to walk with the Lord and having your mother, someone that should actually introduce God in your life, cause indifference or confusion as far as things that God is telling you to do? And so as I got older, about 2017, 2018 was when I had this dream. And it wasn't necessarily an elevation or anything like that. It was something that I had to walk through. At the time, I was located in Canton, Ohio. I had just come back from Atlanta. And I got a lot of my first experiences in that time, where God will shuffle and shift me through different women and different relationships, and they were all pretty much bullies. My mom was a type of mother that idolized money and a certain type of way of living that Christ did not have for me. Do not misunderstand me or get me wrong when I said that I've made many mistakes, sinned much and often. But the counsel from my mother was always the opposite of God. Okay. And my mother was also the type of person that would bring several people against me in order to chastise me or embarrass me or to make herself feel better. And this is a really interesting disclaimer about situations or relationships like this, because ultimately that person that either tries to embarrass or degrade or have sarcastic remarks or say things to hurt a person, they are hurting inside. It is something that they feel about themselves personally. However, as a child, how was I to understand that? So a lot of my wounds, as far as my identity, a lot of my feelings were never validated, because these were things that I just had to take and deal with. This is also why as a child, I had many issues with insecurity. There were times where I didn't like my teeth. There were times where I didn't like the forearms of my arms, from like my elbow down to my wrist. I didn't want to show my arms. There were times where I didn't want to wear shorts. There were times where I just didn't like myself as an overall person. But not only did this come from the bullying of my mother, it also came from the environment that I had to live in with my mother and family. And now I know that living in that environment, not only was it toxic, not only was it unhealthy, not only was it a place that I was not thriving, it was also laced with a lot of death, meaning anything good that I thought about myself, absolutely obsolete, was not there. My faith was extremely damaged, because in order to have faith, you have to be able to think about positive things and be assured that God is in your corner. And from my foundation, from my parents, which both are absent, I never felt the assurance of someone being there for me, someone taking care of me, someone nurturing me and providing me for me. So you can imagine how this goes into my relationship with God. Because not only are your parents your first relationship that you'll have, the foundation and the blueprint, it is also the systematic way that we view God. Like He gives us parents so that we can experience what it feels like to have His love, His nurture, His provision, His comfort. And I didn't receive those things. And so as I get older, I notice that I am attracting women that are bullies, women that like to use up authority in a negative way, women that try to break me through comments, sarcasm, women that try to come into my life and find out information about me, areas that I'm hurting, areas that I'm conflicted and confused, areas where I need love and nurture, to not only give it to me, to not only not give it to me, but also use the personal things that I have divulged to them and with them to demean, degrade, embarrass me to their other friends to make themselves feel significant and important. My mother was a broken woman. But as a child, not only did I not see that, you couldn't tell me that. So as I get older, there are things that God is doing in my life. I feel and think that they're just regular things, like His blessings. Because God always has performed miracles in my life. He has always brought substance and increase and financial provision and open doors and opportunities, and put me in realms of light where people can see His presence and His glory in me. And so now we go back to my social media. Why you never see me post females or people on my timeline or take pictures with women. And it is sad to say, but it is evident and true. Many of the female people or friends, I want to say associates, alignments, connections, or whatever have you that I've had in my life have been just like my mother. Competitive, secretly jealous, devious, mean-spirited, evil-hearted, combative in a passive-aggressive way. And so if I posted all the friendships that I've had over the years, you would think it was something wrong with me, because there has been hundreds of women that I have talked to that have done the same thing that my mother has done. And so you want to talk about trauma or being heartbroken or conflicted and confused. I could never understand the women that came into my life under the pretense of friendship, only for us to conversate or divulge personal information, for them to be offended by the truth, to go back and talk about me to their friends, or bring up personal things that were dear to my heart, or lead me down wrong paths through wrong counsel so that I would fail to make themselves look and or feel better. This past, I want to say 5 to 7 years have been so hurtful, because there were times as a female where I needed comfort. There were times where I needed a shoulder to cry on. And I literally got the skin off of snakes' backs. Meaning, as these people entered into my life, they were shedding. Meaning that I didn't get contact with people. I got contact with the facade of who these women were in my life. But the beautiful, controversial part about it is that these women would do so many things to me. And ironically, for some reason, I don't know why they didn't think that God was revealing to me what they were doing. That they didn't understand that as they stood in my face or in my presence, or we talked about certain conversations, that God was not allowing me to discern their snake-like qualities. And I will even divulge this. When I was a little girl, we had all types of unwholesome, dark, gory movies in our house. It was just dark. And I remember being a kid where I would have dreams about hundreds of thousands of snakes and literally wake up as though they were in my bed trying to throw these things off of me. When I left my mother's house, I stopped having those dreams, those particular dreams. Not that I never had dreams about snakes again, but that magnitude of them, I stopped having those dreams. However, in certain friendships and relationships, I would have dreams of snakes attacking me or trying to bite me or whatever. Plots and plans being divulged in order to see me fall or fail or not make it. And so I say all this because for the past couple days, I've seen posts from women to say, these are particular women that I don't hang around. And it was like a list of, I want to say 10 things that this particular woman said. These are the type of women that I don't hang around. And when I looked at the list, I literally understood why. Coming out of my journey, I literally understand why this woman does not be around these specific type of women with these characteristics. I've had women tell me wrong counsel to end other relationships. I've had women come into my life under the pretense of let's start a business idea, only for them to steal the idea and do it with other friends that they seem or think are worthy or more worthier than me. I've had friends ruin job opportunities from getting close to managers and telling them my personal business that we talked about so that they would not be demoted when my promotion came to get into the building. I've had women try to sleep around with people, men that I have been romantically involved with. I've had women that were supposed to be friends go back and tell my business to these men to try to destroy or disrupt relationships. I've had women come and ask me counsel and advice about a friend to take that same counsel and advice back to the friend. And now that particular friend doesn't like me as well as my friend doesn't like me. And they work together to try to conspire to see me fall. The list that I've endured over the years has been so vast, almost to the point where I am a mother. I have a beautiful baby girl, to where my daughter hasn't had many personal relationships with my friends or so-called friends because of how abusive and toxic women can be when they perceive or think that you're a better mother than them. The other day, me and my daughter were actually playing around the house, and she does this little cute thing where when she wants me to go with her, she will take my 2 fingers and walk with me around the house. She will literally grab my 2 fingers and unction me to walk with her. And while we were walking and playing, I actually told her, "You're my first friend." My daughter has been my first friend. This is a relationship where she's not aiming to hurt me or embarrass me or make comments that will try to cause a person to second guess themselves. Very loving. And to me, that is very sad. That majority, if not all of my friendships and relationships have been laced with abuse and mistreatment and being mishandled and being misjudged. I remember I recently just had a conversation with someone, and we were talking about toxic women. Well, I was actually talking to her about toxic women. And I came to the rationalization that a lot of females that were in my life, because there were times where I went through journeys of homelessness or not having a car, riding the bus. There were times where I didn't have a boyfriend or a relationship. There were times where I'm not a frugal person as far as materialistic things, but the Lord does bless. But to have like the latest bag and fashions and stuff, that's just not something that is like really critical and important to me. But nevertheless, we were talking and I said that a lot of the women in regards to how they treated me, it had nothing to do with the outward substance or things that I had or didn't have. They were fighting the God in me. The fight was between what was in me and what was being not produced because it was already there. What was being manifested in them. And so more often than not, a lot of my friendships have gone through cyclomatic seasons where we would talk for a month or 2 and then not talk for 2 to 4 months. And then they would come back around and we would pick right back up as if nothing had occurred or nothing had stopped us from conversing. However, a lot of times, if the people came back into my life, it wasn't because they had forgave. It wasn't because they had moved forward from the offense. It was because they were coming back to see if I failed, to make themselves feel better. See, some of the hardest friendships and relationships that I say are hard to nurture are ones with people that are passive aggressive. And I've been like that before. So trust me, I know. And it is very hard to work through things and communicate with people that won't even be mature enough to tell you that you've offended them or they have a problem with you. They'll just secretly lie or lurk around until you fail and then move on to say that was God's judgment for how they treated me. Now, do not misunderstand me. I have had it in my life to where I've seen God bring vindication for people that have done me wrong. But am I secretly praying for that person to fail? Am I asking God or praying to whatever God to cause catastrophe in their life so I can feel validated? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Even if my heart is hurting, I will literally cry out to God or have a conversation with other people that will help me to discern what really took place. Because oftentimes the stuff is on such of another level and it's so sneaky that God will send people to me to tell me what's going on because I just can't think that deep to try and hurt somebody. What am I telling you? That some of these relationships have been so unhealthy and toxic that God literally had to come to me and divulge plots and plans and snares and traps. All the while, these people are around. All the while, they're, oh, you're doing so good. I'm proud of you. But that is not exactly what they meant. Most people questioned why God blessed me the way that he did. Why is God showing in my life the way that he does? Why did I get the car? Why did I get the house? Why did I even get the baby? And you can always tell because the women, and I want to say people, the women that did me wrong, when they came back around and their plot or their plan or whatever they attempted to try to do did not work, they would cry. But they would say to me, I don't know why I'm crying, but I did. I knew a lot of them had been lured into plots and plans to see me fail. And I will be honest because I've had this happen several times at jobs, and I never understood this, where I would get a job, and of course, you build your resume, and we're still talking about bullies and toxic women. But I would build, the Lord would open the door for me to get a job. And as I got in, they would look at me and it didn't look like it was much to me. And then when I get in the job and I start flowing and functioning, whoever was over me, the supervisor, would become jealous or envious and plot for me to fail, like literally sabotage my work at the job and conspire with 3 or 4 or 5 people to try and get me fired. Like they literally all would work together, either through false documentation, giving patients and clients to other people so that I couldn't meet a quota. They would literally work together, mess up my computer system, turn people at the facilities or organizations against me that were patients because they didn't want them to like me. And all the while, God would keep blessing and he would keep increasing. And I remember oftentimes praying like, Lord, I didn't do anything wrong. Why are these women like that? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't say anything wrong. All I did was show up. And for some of you that have experienced this, that is all you did. Literally show up. Because what's showing up in you is God in you. What's showing up in you is light to expose darkness. What's showing up in you is the capacity for God to move through your life. And the enemy with these specific women who have been hurt or heartbroken, he will use them to try to destroy a person's life. And I say this because it wasn't just at one job. It's like literally every job that I go to, there's always a woman there that has lost something or lost somebody or went through a bad relationship or been cheated on. Lost in the sense of that. And they will have this pain, this hole, this void where they need to scoop women up to dog them, embarrass them, make them feel less than. In order to fill that hole, they need to see other people hurting. Why would that be your choice for you to feel satisfaction? And I used to get so agitated. Like, can you imagine getting up in the morning? I remember at one specific job, it was so hilarious because I said to myself, there must be something wrong with me to where I know what's going to happen at this job today as far as the negativity, but I'm still getting up, getting dressed, going to work. It was because I loved the jobs, because of how I was serving the people. I hated what was going on in the environment. And so it takes me back to like TV shows with like Housewives of Atlanta and Housewives of Potomac and so many other TV shows. Hip Hop Atlanta, whatever these shows are, where the main focal point is women tearing other women apart, women making other women feel less than, women laughing at women that are going through some of the most devastating, trying, catastrophic times of their life. And this is what brings media coverage and views. Where did we become so heartless? Where did we become so just thriving on cruelty? Because that's exactly what it is. And I myself even had to grow up in the sense of, because I was raised in that. My mom was very harsh with my friends. She was harsh with me. And you know where it came from? Because her mother was harsh with her. And her mother was harsh with her. And her mother was harsh with her. And so I'm getting this level of cruelty so bad because I'm the one to break the generational chain. I saw my mother have friends that didn't necessarily appreciate her but wanted to use her. My grandmother really didn't have substantial relationships. She had a lot of younger women around her, but I will never forget having a conversation with her and asking her, why are there so many women around you that are heartbroken? But I noticed that the longer that they stayed around my grandmother, it wasn't as though they were being healed. It wasn't as though they were getting better. These women looked worse. Their hair was falling out. They just looked depleted of life. And that spoke volumes to me. And I remember asking her, have you ever gone through a process of healing? This is my grandmother who just recently passed in March. I remember asking her about 4 years ago, have you gone through a process of healing? Because it was the same thing of what I go through. All the women that were around her, she could look dressed and feel nice, and all the other women were losing their hair, losing their relationships. But she kept these women around her. And so I went through a long stint of homelessness and transiency and no one has ever known this except for people that were close to me. Well, in that time where I was homeless, I got an opportunity to live with different women. And they're like, oh, we'll help you. You could come stay here with us. And when I did, if I would get a job or go back to school or anything, these women would rip the rug right from under me. How it originally started was not how it ended. Many of them knew that I was an author. Many of them knew that I wrote a book. They brought me into their house because they thought it was going to be a get-rich-quick scheme where if they let me stay with them, that this book was magically going to blow up overnight. and they were going to be the recipients of monetary gain. No, what happened was these women just tried to pit me out or exploit me for financial gain, which also actually almost led me to being sex trafficked by a family member. Every time a person puts you in their company, it doesn't necessarily mean that they want the company because they want to see what's best for you, for you to progress and do better. Some people have a secret plot, motive, or plan that's going to end in your devastation, but their increase. And I say that is the most difficult woman to try to deal with. A woman whose idol is money. She doesn't care who she has to hurt. She doesn't care what she has to say to cover up who she really is. Because this is why for years I couldn't understand. I keep attracting these specific type of people or relationships. But it was because they were not loving. They were not nurturing. Majority of the women that I had been around, they were void of emotion. Like they never cried. Something bad would happen. You never saw them with feeling. It was like they just were moving throughout earth as robotic. But women are not supposed to be like that. Women are nurturers because we feel with our heart. And so as I would find myself in tough times, or let's just say going through the process for my character to be refined, I made a lot of mistakes, big mistakes. But somehow God would always turn them around. The thing that was meant to happen to me never actually happened to me, and he would use it because I will always give my testimony. And so now with personal areas in my life, I see how every single time the Lord would put me on a route or a mission, and then a woman would come into my life and they would do something or say something, or we would fall out, and it would devastate me. And it was almost like I was going back into my childhood house in these relationships with these women because they had the same character, the same heart, the same disposition, same judgment, same treatment as my mother. And this happened for years. The worst of it being after I had my daughter. You know, when a woman has a baby, this is a time when people are just oozing with emotion and their hearts are just so lubricated with love. That is not what me and my daughter got. Me and my daughter got pushed out in the cold. We were treated bad. And it was ultimately because God was shining a light on a lot of the women who were parents who were not good parents to their children. And so it caused them to treat me bad because my aim was to try to be a good parent. They would withhold support and love. My daughter is 16 months. Nobody, not any of my friends, have ever really watched her. And if they did, I had to pay them. It was not for free. It was not a service. It was not a courtesy. It was because they could get something out of it. And in lieu of that, it was never because I was going to the movies or out on a date. I was going to work. So none of my friends actually really helped for the sake of helping me. These women, the ones that are bullies, the ones that are heartless, the ones that have been devastated, the ones that have experienced, I don't even understand. But they come out, they have such a revengeful, spiteful, angry spirit. And the crazy part about it is, whatever they've gone through and endured, it wasn't because I caused it. I was the recipient of it. I remember I was talking to someone and they said, you have a lot of friends that are miserable. And I was like, no, that's not true. And it is. It was because majority of the time people are calling me or wanting to converse with me. It's because they're in a bad place. And they remember how we talked and we laughed and God gave them knowledge or wisdom or whatever was needed in that time. And they call back. They resurface. Oftentimes, more than not, no matter how bad they've done me, I do take them back in. However, God is really dealing with my heart about separating. I had to think about it. There has been so much content that I wanted to put on social media that I would not put because I knew that the truth would offend those people that were in my life. As far as the truth of what they really did. See, some of them perceive and believe as friends that they were so smart and I was so stupid that I couldn't see or discern what they were doing. But the entire time God was decoding them to me. How they had got offended about small things that we could have talked about. How they misunderstood me because of however they felt about me. That is what they took out of the conversation. Misconstrued information, lied about things. And this has been on my heart because I picked up the phone today and I saw a post from someone and they were talking about being bullied. What do we do when our females, the women, turn into bullies? We already know that the man has a different way of loving and showing love, let alone letting himself be loved. What do we do when our nurturers, the women that are supposed to sprinkle love to see things grow, blossom, transform, and change, turn into hard-hearted bullies? We're in trouble. From what I just told you, I was in trouble. And so I find myself in a place right now where I see a lot of people starting to resurface and try to come back into my life. But now that God has revealed this thing to me, that it came from the unhealthy foundation that was set from my mother, it has changed the whole precedent for me. I used to say, man, I want a lot of friends, maybe like 4 or 5. You know, looking on social media, you see the women that are really thriving together. They go on trips together, start businesses together. They may be married and their husbands are friends or their children, you know, do things together. I think that God really delivered me because now I am okay if that's not my reality. I am okay if I don't have 4 or 5 friends to go places and do things with. I am okay. I didn't ever think I would get to that place. But now I know and understand that as I have allowed these revolving doors to come into my life, it was because I was growing, but also because of the void of my mother not being in my life. But I have finally come to the place of peace and contentment. I remember a woman told me, Patricia, your mom is not going to be in your life like that. Like she said, you know how other women have their mother and they do things and they go places and things like that. She said, that's not God's portion for you. I said, the devil is a whole and complete liar. And from that, I fought to keep my mother in my life and keep her around. But it was only to my detriment because every time I let her back around, it was always worse. People in the family perceive me as this horrible, mean daughter just because of things my mother has said. And so what happens is you go back to the family. You're trying to explain yourself so they don't perceive you wrong or judge you wrong because nobody's really actually interested to know if what your mom is saying is false. And so you waste a lot of time. And it's the same thing I'm doing in a lot of the friendships that I'm not doing anymore. This is even for a bigger purpose. And I'll tell you why. Because I am not the only woman that has endured this. Like friends that don't feel like you're worthy. They don't listen to you when you talk about ideas or ways to generate money or better yourself, but they will listen to your advice to take it back to their boyfriend or their man so they can look smart. And then paint you as though you're this horrible person, you have so much going on, or you're not desirable. So that man won't want you, but you don't want him anyway. But it is all a plot, plan, and a scheme, because a lot of these women, they don't really want help. They don't want help. Because you'll talk to them months down the line and they'll be going through the same thing over and over and over. What am I saying about female bullies? It's unhealthy, it's toxic, it's unwholesome, and you will never get what you need. And let's take it deeper. These women come around and stay around forever so that you don't receive your happy ending. They are never interested in you getting with a man, getting married, and coming to the place of happiness. And so not that you're their friend, not that they want to spend time with you, because they don't even take you around their other friends. They want you around because you're a place of misery that they can bring their misery to and talk to. And then they can go back with their other friends and make it seem like they're so happy and life is so blissful and grand. And I had to discover this the hard way. Like, why do all my friends come and talk to me on the phone, but they never want to go anywhere? They don't want to go out in public. They don't want to do anything. Women that are insecure never want a woman around them that they think is prettier, that they think or perceive as prettier, or doing more than them, or can show them up. Because oftentimes when there's a change that's going to take place, God will bring people into your life that are on a higher level than you. And you can either decide to receive or reject. A lot of women have rejected me because they perceived, oh, she's pretty, or she has this, or she has that. And so they don't want to take me around other people. And so they think it's like Cinderella. I'm just supposed to sit in the house and cook and clean and not go and enjoy myself until they come back and decide for the 2 months that they want to be my friend. We can talk about all their drama, what they're going through. They get their answer or reject what God is telling them, go back out and do what they want to do. And then 2 or 3 months later, come back to talk about the same thing over and over and over. And I know, because I've done this too. I've been in a place for a season, and God, it's the same thing over and over and over. And you can't spin it. You can't shake it. And so you talk about it until God plucks it out of your heart. But this is something totally different, because a lot of my friends are normally dating and I'm not. I may have a casualty here and there, but I'm not actively dating. I'm not going out on dates. I'm not being taken to dinner. None of my friends talk to me about this. Because as you know, they don't value me. So why would they tell me anything that's going to help me bring value to myself? I say all that to say, with friendships like this, there's not much that's going to come from it. You're going to give more than you receive. You're going to be hurt. You're going to be blackmailed. You're going to be talked about. You're going to be used to make that person feel better if you're ever in a bad place. I say all this to say, because sometimes those friendships that are bullies, that if we keep trying to go back into those friendships to make us feel significant or important, you will not get the person in your life that is meant to make you feel loved, appreciated, nurtured. And a lot of times that comes through companionship, male companionship, and marriage. Sometimes these women come and block the very thing that you're trying to get from them. To go out, to have fun, to go on trips, to enjoy yourself. You're not going to get that from them, because that is not what they are there for. And so healing takes place when you realize there's nothing I did wrong. There's not even anything that I said wrong. They were looking for something to say anyway, just to defame my name. And so you eventually learn to let it go. You learn to let these friendships go. You learn to let people be who they want to be. You learn to stop being codependent, meaning you're only existing because they come around or they need you for a week or two because they're in an emergency. You eventually learn, I can't help them. They don't even want to help themselves. You learn that. And you gain peace about the relationship that you didn't have with your mother that started the cycle with all these unhealthy women to begin with. And then you walk through an open door where someone loves you and takes you by the hand and supports you and wants what's best for you and wants the same thing that you're trying so hard to obtain through these friendships by not maximizing your potential, not being who you fully are, not speaking, because there is a level of containment that comes through friendships like these. Like you can't be who you fully want to be because it makes them look or feel bad about what they're not doing. But that's not what we're here to do. That's not what we're showing up to do. There is a such thing as humility, but there's also a such thing as giving God glory, and you shrinking, being contained and holding on to these people that don't congratulate your success with an inner exuberance. The competition, the jealousy, the backbiting that you have to endure through these friendships will never yield anything of substance. You as this person have to make up in your mind, that's not what I want. That's not what I need. I don't need a friend that secretly bullies me and thinks that I'm too stupid to realize what they're doing. You don't need friends like that. You don't even need associates like that. Nobody even has business colleagues like that. Why would you let a friend come into your personal space and be like that? And so it is my prayer through divulging my personal information with you that I've gone through for years. Even I just started 7 years ago. I've actually been going through this since I was a little kid. It is my prayer, my hope that you let God pluck this area out of your life so that he can bring people of substance that love you and want to see you doing better and want to see you healthy and want to see you have a family and want to see you married, the business blossoming, your hair growing, your edges growing back, all of that. Because we know nowadays women will pick anything that they can apart on another woman to make themselves feel good and significant. And I pray that you realize that your significance doesn't come from these relationships. It comes from who you are in Jesus Christ. This is why I'm always talking about healing, identity, and purpose. It took me to heal from my mother to finally get my real identity, to understand my purpose. It is not my purpose to sit around people that demean, devalue, degrade, humiliate, misunderstand, misjudge, and mishandle me. It is the opposite of that. So, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of The Dialogue. You are so appreciated for the time that you have taken to set apart to be fueled up, okay? This podcast was extremely long. It's one of my longest podcasts that I've done. And there is more content to actually come on this subject. But for now, we are in a place of peace and rest. And that's what I pray for you. Restoration, for you to be your whole self in mind, body, and spirit. Don't forget to follow the podcast for more content. As you know, we are healing souls one conversation at a time. It is my hope that you have a blessed, glorious night or day at whatever appointed time you listen to this podcast. And we'll be back with more content at a later day. Bye, everybody.